Reading for 20 minutes a day can have a huge impact on a child's success in school. How do we help children and families develop at-home reading habits that foster reading success? Join me, Sarah Collinge, as I share tips for book selection, classroom libraries, accountability, and parent involvement in this short video webinar titled At Home Reading. In the primary grades, grades K through 2, children are in the early development of their reading skills. They have limited strategies for figuring out unknown words and limited experience reading complex sentence structures. With little exposure to text, their vocabulary and background knowledge is limited. For them, reading is a slow process that is oftentimes exhausting. This is why, at primary, we direct students to read short texts and short chapters. We help them select books that they can read with 95 to 100% accuracy, a number that correlates to reading comprehension. When I go out to schools, I typically see teachers implementing the 95 to 100% accuracy rule as a way of helping readers pick a just right book. But what is just right for primary readers isn't necessarily what is just right for intermediate readers. By the time children learn to read, and read more fluently, usually sometime in second grade, they have a variety of strategies for figuring out unknown words. They have increased experience with reading sentences that include complex patterns, and their exposure to a variety of text types has increased their vocabulary and background knowledge. These children read at a higher reading rate than before and have increased their reading stamina. They are confidently reading longer text or chapters. Now, accuracy is less important, with 87 to 100% accuracy relating to reading comprehension. Let's use the analogy of riding a bike to help us think about the difference between primary and intermediate readers. In primary, readers are learning to read. But in intermediate, we want readers to shift from learning to read to training for an event. When bike riders train for an event, they set up a training calendar. How might we help our intermediate readers set up a training calendar for reading? The first component of training for a cycling event is to connect with a group and a mentor. With the mentor as a guide, cyclists try out challenging courses requiring new skills. In reading, this is like the read aloud, where students try out new genres or topics in challenging literature. They try out new skills with their mentor to guide them. The second component of training for a cycling event is to schedule moderate rides with a group or partner. This is where cyclists practice new skills using a course that is relatively familiar. In reading, this is like a book club, where students practice new skills in genres they have already been exposed to in the read aloud. Their peers offer collaboration and support as needed. These two types of text experiences, challenging and moderate, make up the 90-minute reading block. This is the type of reading students will be doing during the school day. What types of training do cyclists do on their own? They schedule easy to moderate rides in order to continually practice skills they have already mastered. Readers need time to practice and increase fluency with skills they have already mastered. Our students will plan easier, longer reads for at-home reading. Like cyclists, they will also build into their schedule time for short, easy reads and opportunities to practice literacy skills in other contexts. They will even take time off from reading to rest and recover. In the bicycling world, this is called cross-training. Easy to moderate reading and cross-training is the work of at-home reading. In the CIA curriculum, students are exposed to challenging text and new skills and strategies in read aloud. Students then practice these new skills and strategies in book clubs where texts are matched to each student's instructional reading level. The example here shows the CIA Unit of Study Realistic Fiction Shiloh 4.1 and the text used in the accompanying book club guide. With the heaviest, most challenging reading taking place in the 90-minute block, lighter reading is reserved for extra and at-home reading. Students will be self-selecting books that fall into the easy to moderate range. Some books will be selected for longer reads, while other books will be selected for shorter 5 to 20-minute time blocks. Let's begin by talking about how intermediate readers select books for independent reading. Catherine Snow tells us it is the match or mismatch between characteristics of genre, subject matter, and a reader's capabilities that determines the likelihood of successful comprehension. What we learn from her words is that matching a text to a child's background knowledge is more important than matching a text to a child's capabilities. In other words, the more background knowledge students bring to a text, the easier the readability of that text. The Common Core state standards recognize text complexity as being made up of 3 leveling systems. The first is the qualitative level. If the text matches genres, topics, authors, series books, and text structures that the student already has been exposed to, then the book is at the student's qualitative level. The next is the task level. If the text is selected appropriate to the student's reading stamina, then the text is at the student's task level. Finally, there is the quantitative level. If the student is 87 to 100% accurate when reading the text, then the text is within the student's quantitative range. To determine a student's quantitative range, I recommend using the STAR assessment, which will give each child their ZPD, their zone of proximal development range. Once that range has been determined, you can help students learn to self-select books within that range. As a rule of thumb, intermediate readers can typically read up to 1 year above and below their independent reading level. If a student is on grade level at 4th grade, their range will likely be 3.0 to 5.0. Teach students as they're shopping for books to select a book that is familiar. In other words, they've read other books in that genre or by that topic, by that author or in that series, and with that text structure. When they're reading books that are familiar, they can stretch to the top of their ZPD range. When they're selecting a book that is unfamiliar, in other words, they have no practice or they have limited practice with the books like that, then they should choose a book in the bottom half of their ZPD range. Also help students consider their reading stamina when selecting books for independent reading. When reading something longer than what he or she typically reads, go with a text that is quantitatively lower. Emma Walton Smith, author of Raising Bookworms, encourages us that it only takes one book to hook them. It only takes one really successful, thrilling, wonderful, losing oneself in the magic of reading experience to captivate that child's imagination. And then, she says, if we're smart, to take that moment and that opportunity and parlay it into other wonderful reading experiences. Clearly, helping children find that one really successful, thrilling, wonderful book is the key to engagement. Some will say that letting children find that book on their own is an important factor in reading engagement. However, my research points to the fact that, in many cases, choice is paralyzing for young readers. For many, a trip to the library is overwhelming. There are too many titles to pick from, and their lack of reading experience makes them ill-equipped to find the perfect book on their own. When I think about my own reading life, I realize that probably 80 to 90% of the books I choose to read are titles that came recommended to me. Sometimes friends or family members will share a book with me, or other times I respond to a book review I've read in a magazine, or a suggested title from websites like Barnes & Noble and Goodreads. I think it's important to explicitly teach children how to select books based on recommendations, and then provide opportunities for them to use these resources. Consider explicitly teaching students how to use websites to type in titles that they have enjoyed reading in order to find out what other people who like that book have also read. My favorite website is Goodreads. Typing in a title like Shiloh gives readers a wealth of ideas for other books they might enjoy across a variety of categories, including Newbery Award books and great dog books. I am beyond excited to announce that Read Side by Side now has available for your classroom libraries a series of book boxes to pair with your read aloud and book club units. These book boxes incorporate titles that match the genres, authors, series, and topics children are captivated by in the CIA curriculum. Teachers can also ease the burden of book selection by creating a well-organized and inviting classroom library. I recommend organizing your classroom library by genre, topic, author, and series books, rather than by level. Books can still be marked with their level, and students can use their ZPD range as a guide when selecting books. The classroom library shown here is a library that was organized and set up by the teacher. Notice that in this example, all the books are placed in bins, allowing the students to browse by cover. This next example shows a classroom library that was organized and set up by the students. Notice that in this example, some books are placed in bins while other books are placed on the shelf, spine out. This library allows students to browse by cover and also by spine. Not only do we want to help children find easy to moderate books for independent reading, we also want to teach them to take time off from reading to rest or cross-train. When training for an event, bicyclists know that while practice is important, there are dangers to overtraining. Too much time on the bike can lead to burnout or, in some cases, boredom. Bicyclists recognize that the importance of taking time off to rest, cross-train, and catch up on life. We can apply the same logic to a reading routine and intentionally help kids take time off from reading to rest and practice other literacy skills. Let's talk about easy reads. There will be many times across the course of a school day or at home when students only have 5 to 10 minute time blocks for reading. Make sure to have your classroom library stocked with short text. Teach students that when time is short, good readers pick up quick reads. Short story collections, nonfiction, poetry, and classroom magazines are all great options for students. Additionally, teach children and parents that there is value in taking a break from reading to practice other literacy skills. Doing so can prevent boredom and burnout. What types of at-home activities might fall into the category of cross-training? Let me provide a few ideas. Activities that expose children to their home language and culture. Religious activities such as church and youth group. Family dinners, game nights, and outings. Extracurricular activities and volunteer work. Trips to the library or bookstore. Hobbies and pretend play. Skits, puppets, and theater. Building and creating. Reading with family members and listening to audiobooks. Writing, journaling, and emailing. Maybe the hardest part about at-home reading for parents is juggling the after-school schedule. Instead of expecting 20 minutes of nightly reading, help parents find a schedule that works for them and for their student. Here are a few examples. This first example shows my 5th grade daughter's reading schedule. First, I plugged in the activities she does each week, including Sunday school, a trip to the public library, and youth group. Then I built a reading schedule that values these cross-training activities and gives her one day off each week. She aims to read 30 to 60 minutes 3 days a week. This next example is more traditional, placing the nightly reading during the school week and allowing time for other activities over the weekend. This last example is for the child who likes to read nightly until finishing a book and then take time off before starting the next book. Most importantly, teach children and parents the value of reading, both within and beyond the school day. Work with families to create positive feelings about reading. Devote time to teaching parents about literacy habits. Teach them what their role should be when it comes to reading at home. Give them choices that respect their family time and schedules. Teach them habits for at-home reading, such as the importance of taking books with you in the car, to the gym, or to activities. the value of listening to reading. Audiobooks aren't cheating. And the significance of asking questions regularly about what their child is reading. To find out more about this topic and others, please go to readsidebyside.com and join our social media community on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram. Thank you for listening.